Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Saints Insider Podcast. Today is Friday, September 22nd. I am Zach Ewing, along with Luke Johnson, Rod Walker, and Jeff Duncan, here inside our Metairie studios for another episode. Today, we preview the New Orleans Saints at the Green Bay Packers on Sunday. We'll look at the game from every angle. We'll talk about the injury report, keys to the game, and give our predictions for Saints and Packers. Saints Insider Podcast is sponsored by Bank Plus. Their banking decisions are actually made here in New Orleans by local bankers who know the community and take the time to know you. From small business to big business, home loans to bank anywhere technology, Bank Plus is here for New Orleans. Learn more at bankplus.net. So let's get into it. Guys, Saints Packers, Lambeau Field. Saints actually don't go to Green Bay all that often. Luke, you're a Wisconsin guy, so it maybe means more to you than anything, but this is like the sixth time since 1990, like going back 30-plus years that the Saints have played a regular season game at Lambeau, so special occasion.
Yeah, well, look, I might be biased a little bit, but I think anytime you go to Lambeau Field, it's a special occasion. And honestly, talking to some of the guys this week, I feel like a lot of NFL players would agree with that. It's a really cool stadium to play in. Maybe it's not a cool place to live if you're like 22 years old and you have loads of money, but I think when it comes to game day experiences, it doesn't get much better than going to Lambeau Field, and especially if you're a New Orleans Saints team that's used to playing in a dome and you get to go there in September instead of December.
Yeah, look, it's the home opener for the Packers, so it should be an amplified crowd. Obviously excited to see Jordan Love in his first official start replacing Aaron Rodgers, so it should be great atmosphere, I think, for the game.
And outside of the Superdome, I mean, I think this is probably the stadium that NFL players always talk about. I mean, there's so much history there, and so yeah, you can understand why they're so excited about going up there.
I'm trying to think, with all the stadiums that have phased out over the decades, like maybe New Orleans, Green Bay, and maybe Miami are the only ones left that have actually have like some history and have hosted. Lambeau hasn't hosted Super Bowls, but have hosted big games and have like history behind them.
Yeah, I think Arrowhead maybe too.
Yeah, Arrowhead's a good one. Yeah,
but no, I mean Lambeau is, I think, the most iconic stadium in the league. I don't think there's any question. I think it's still cool because they still have some sections that just have like kind of bleachery kind of seats. I mean, it's just a different environment there. They built up all around it. I mean, we were there just a year ago for preseason joint practices, and Luke will tell you. I mean, like all around, it's become almost like an entertainment district. Lots of bars, restaurants. They've got hotels now. I can remember back in the day, you used to have to stay in Appleton because there weren't enough hotels. That's not the case anymore. So, look, I think it's going to be a great environment. It sounds like it's going to be windy, which is interesting to me, that there's going to be a lot of wind for this game. So that could be a factor. So something we have to get to the stadium early and kind of check out the pregame routine. Guys, I know talking about taking multiple cleats to try and play on this grass surface and figure out what exactly is going to be the best footing.
Yeah, and you can bet probably some pretty good money that Lou Headley and Blake Grupe and Zach Wood are going to be among the first people out there testing out those conditions. I was talking to those guys about playing there this week, and they said it's not really like one of those types of stadiums where the wind swirls based on the facade of the stadium and everything like that. But it is, I mean, it's tricky kicking in those environments. You're kicking on grass. For the first time this year, obviously, Grupe's done that a lot in his college career, but it's a change, and wind certainly is just a variable they don't have to account for very often. I mean, I think this team's playing like 14 games in a dome this year, something like that. So, have to keep an eye out on it.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to have frozen tundra of Lambeau Field, but you mentioned the wind, Dunk, and like weather for you weather nerds, like wind is the most unpredictable thing until 24 hours before. You don't know what the wind is going to do. But as of right now, they're saying like 20-mile-an-hour sustained winds. That's certainly enough to have an effect on the game, possibly some rain. So it's not going to be this controlled environment. And Derek Carr kind of has this reputation of struggling playing outdoors, Rod, and like it will not be the same. And for the Saints, like Luke said, their schedule, this and then New England in a couple of weeks, really, I mean, I guess Tampa Bay, like in December, it's December, so maybe you see something, but it's one of the only opportunities for weather to affect one of their games.
Yeah, this team, they've practiced outside this week, to be on the grass, just to sort of get familiar with that. I was talking to, I think, Malcolm Roach just about the cleats and just how important that is and the type that they're, trying to wear this week. So it will be, it'll be a little adjustment for these guys, but I don't think it'll be something that will have that much of an effect on the game, but it will be definitely something to consider.
Now, let's dig into the matchup a little bit, and let's start with today's injury report because it did have a nasty surprise on it for the Saints. Foster Moreau is doubtful. We knew that. Jamal Williams is out. We knew that was the case. But today in practice, Paulson Adebo injures his hamstring, Luke, and he's listed as questionable. And that could be a big deal. Again, Jordan Love's got 6 touchdown passes, no interceptions. Marcus May is out with suspension, so this is already a thinner secondary. So not the guy you wanted to lose.
Yeah, I mean, this is precisely why I didn't really understand the Bradley Roby move when they made it. Because, cool, if you want to turn the slot over to Alontae Taylor, great, I get it. But, I mean, we saw it last year. You know, they traded from a position of strength last year because they felt they could play fine without C.J. Gardner-Johnson. And then by, like, week 3, they're starting Chris Harris, who they signed off the street. You know, and I just think that this is such a volatile league in terms of injuries. You just never know what's going to happen. I mean, we went through this whole week thinking Paulson Adebo is, locked to play, and then he injures his hamstring in a Friday walkthrough practice. So it's potentially going to be a really difficult thing if he can't play. Do they slide Taylor back outside and maybe play somebody like Ugo Amadi on the inside? Do they give Ike Yadam starting reps on the outside? That's big drop-offs, both directions.
I specifically asked Alontae Taylor that today, and he said he's expecting to stay in the slot, and they'll have Isaac out playing corner. So, Isaac obviously played with Green Bay for 1 year, I believe, so he's, played on that field before. But that's a big task to ask him to come in and play the outside corner at the last minute. This is Friday.
Yeah, well, and look, I think we all saw some really good things out of Yadam in training camp. I thought back in like early August he had a good chance of making the team just because of what he showed at corner beyond what he does in special teams. But I think Paulson Adebo's been playing really good football. So even if you feel pretty good about Yadam coming in there, I mean, Adebo's a rising, ascending young player. Mm-hmm. And it's not like Green Bay has any shortage of weapons on the outside. And you're talking about going into a game against the team with the number 1 quarterback in the NFL by passer rating right now, potentially down 2 starters in the secondary. Tough spot to be in if you're the Saints.
Yeah, and I think Amadi's even on the injury report too, so he's a little banged up as well.
Another practice injury too.
Yeah, you're thin there, and certainly does call into question whether they maybe make a call to Bradley Roby next week. But losing Adebo so late, really they're kind of hamstrung there. But I will say, the one thing that does stand out is how many times do we hear Dennis Allen in camp talk about how he really likes the depth of his secondary. He thinks they've got a bunch of guys that can play in this league at a high level. So we're going to find out, right? I mean, Ike Allen is one of those guys that I think has a lot of confidence in. But he's going to get tested for sure. Green Bay is going to come after him. The way Marshawn Lattimore is going, and we saw it last week, no one's even testing him anymore. And now you're going to have 2 younger guys that I think are going to get most of the targets by the Packers. And you're right, Luke, even though they don't have Christian Watson, I don't think he's playing this week, they still are talented on the perimeter. They've got a lot of young talent. Jaden Reed's their leading receiver. He looks like a dynamic rookie. And Dobbs is an excellent player. We saw him last year in camp make some big plays against the Saints in the preseason. So, they're going to get – I think it's fair to say the defense is going to get tested more in this game than they have been so far this year.
And Christian Watson is questionable for this game. He was limited in practice today, so he might be available out there too. Yeah. He's a burner.
Yeah, that's where I was going next with that is he's questionable. Aaron Jones questionable, and also David Bakhtiari. They're good offensive linemen and their rookie pass rusher, Lucas Van Ness. Those guys are questionable for the Packers. So is there any chance? I mean, Paulson Adebo is listed as questionable. You guys just came from practice. Usually when you pull a hamstring, you're not coming back 2 days later and playing. I mean, we don't expect him to be out there.
I think they're probably just playing a little game with the Packers right now. I would be shocked if he plays.
Yeah, we don't know anything about the severity of it. We don't know if it's a tweak or a pull. But I think I'm not surprised at all that they put him as questionable, even if they have maybe other ideas about what's possible here.
It says to me that if if Alontae Taylor's answering questions about staying in and Yadam going out, I mean, they're preparing as if he's not going to play. So.
Yeah, because when I asked the question, I wasn't sure if he'd give me an answer, but he did give me an answer. So, I think that's going to be the plan.
No, that's interesting. All right, we'll dig into our preview kind of like we have the last 2 weeks. We'll start when the Saints have the ball. Again, we mentioned the wind. Could that affect passing games? I think the Saints would love to run the ball, Luke, with Kendry Miller and maybe some Taysom Hill too. Anyway, whether it's windy or not, we saw that against Carolina. They would love to set up some of the passing game with the run.
Yeah, it's just a matter of can they do it. We haven't seen it since last year. Yeah, even in the 3 preseason games, I think you could make the excuse for the preseason games they were operating behind their second and third team offensive lines. You can make an excuse for the struggles there, but I mean, we're talking about 5 opportunities to see this team in game action, and just about every time their actual running backs are averaging 3 yards a carry or less. So yes, they want to get it going. I personally am really excited to see Kendry Miller go, because even though Tony Jones scored 2 touchdowns last week, it was a really nice story. I think the rookie running back Miller has so much explosiveness, and he can just bring a different element to this offense if he can stay healthy. They haven't had around here in a while, like a true home run hitter. So I'm excited to see it, and if he can actually give some juice to that running attack. And then you add in what Taysom's able to do there. I think that's only going to help. It's going to help the protection. It's going to help clear up passing lanes for Derek Carr. Maybe they can finally get Juwan Johnson involved. There's a lot of different things I think they can build off this rushing attack if they can actually get it going to where they're not so heavily dependent on, hey, Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave and Mike Thomas, just go beat your guy so we can get you the ball.
And this is a Green Bay defense that hadn't been great against the run this season. The Falcons rushed for over 200 yards against them. And obviously they have Bijan Robinson, who's a different animal. But even the Bears, they ran for 100 yards the week before that. So I don't know if this Green Bay team is going to be able – I don't think this Green Bay run defense will be as good as some of the ones the Saints have seen thus far. And I think this is a good chance for them to get on track with the running game, I feel like.
And, we talked about Paulson Adebo getting added to the injury report. Jair Alexander got added today, and he's easily their best cover corner. So if he were not to be able to go, that would be a huge blow, I think, for the Packers.
And that'd be 2 straight weeks the Saints got their opponent's top corner injured. I mean, you talk about a break if Jair Alexander cannot go, just like J.C. Horn couldn't go for Carolina last week. But Kendry Miller, fantasy football guys, if you lost a Nick Chubb or somebody, I mean, like, you could do a lot worse than Kendry Miller. Is he 100% full go?
That's what they said, yeah. And I think we talked about it on the last episode. I think he's going to definitely alternate with Tony Jones. I think they'll both get a lot of snaps. I'll be surprised if Kendry Miller's out there on third down and passing downs. Maybe. They've praised him for his ability to run routes more so than I think he did at TCU, but I still think Tony Jones more polished pass protector. And that's a huge part of the Saints' offensive package. So it'll be interesting to watch one way or the other. But Luke's right. I mean, there's a little more juice to Kendry Miller getting to that second level than what they've had so far. Even with Jamal Williams. Jamal Williams is not necessarily that guy to get through to that second level. We've seen he's going to get the yards that are there, and that's kind of what you're going to get with Jamal Williams. This guy has a chance, I think, to break a 4-yard gain and turn it into a 15-yard gain.
What is Kendry Miller's longest run in this game? Let's go around the room with some guesses.
Wow. Well, I mean, look, this is a pretty good chance, I think, for them to get their running game going, like Rod said. So let's go with 17 yards.
All right.
Feels good to me.
Rod?
I just pick a random number. I'm going to go with 20 yards.
We like random numbers.
Luke? Crazy.
Well, no, this is scientifically backed here. 27 yards.
Wow.
I was going to say 22.
On the dot. We're not talking tenths of yards here, 27 yards.
It's going to happen. If you are right on this, we need to see the crystal ball next week. Because
Luke Stradamus.
Speaking with confidence. Okay, so Kendry Miller, obviously the Saints receivers have been terrific. Tight end room with Foster Moreau doubtful. You mentioned Juwan Johnson. Do we see a little more Jimmy Graham this week finally?
Well, I certainly think we're going to see more of him. I just don't know yet. It's been hard just trying to think of what his role is going to be on this team this whole time. I think everybody's just kind of figured, like, okay, start with the red zone and go from there. through 2 weeks, he hasn't had much of a role at all. I don't think he's been targeted once. He's been in there running some routes in the red zone, but we haven't seen the ball go his way. So maybe they throw the ball to him a little bit more in this game, get him going. But personally, I'm wondering why the Juwan Johnson thing hasn't taken off yet. I think all of us thought he'd have a huge year this year. I still think it's possible. I mean, there's still 15 games left to go, but I think at some point he's got to be part of this, because I think if you were able to get the tight ends involved in the passing game, it's going to open things up for the other guys more than it already has been.
I think a lot of those short passes that you see tight ends getting, I think Michael Thomas is just getting such a high volume of those, and it's kind of taken away from Juwan's catches. And so I think there are going to be some games when Juwan gets targeted twice and that's it. And they just got so many weapons on his team. I just think that's going to be kind of the norm this year, throughout the season.
Yeah, I mean, like I think they said, right, there's only so many touches go around. So, right now, why would you take the ball out of Chris Olave's hands or Rashid Shaheed when they're making these big plays? But matchup-wise, I do think it could be another week where they keep going to the receivers.
All right, switching gears, when the Packers have the ball, and we talked about this a little bit when we talk about Paulson Adebo being out and what the Saints will do. But let's talk about Jordan Love. Jordan Love, Luke, you wrote about it. You can read it on NOLA.com and in Sunday's Times-Picayune. Jordan Love's from the same hometown as Derek Carr, from Bakersfield, where I worked. Not a heralded guy, kind of like Derek Carr, maybe even less heralded. Went to Utah State, kind of came out of nowhere, sat behind Aaron Rodgers, and is finally getting a chance to start. 6 touchdown passes, no interceptions, most TD passes in the NFL without a pick. He's kind of been a revelation. Do you buy him as the real deal?
Not yet. I think I want to see him. Look, he had a chance against the Falcons to lead a game-winning drive in the fourth quarter. That's where the stud quarterbacks make their hay, right? And the drive fizzled. I think he had like a false start on a 4th and 1 sneak on that drive.
Overthrow, maybe.
Yeah, and I. Before I'm able to, I'm going to say I'm crowning this guy as the next great Packers quarterback. You got to crush it in those situations. He might eventually, but it's way too early. I do think that it's been incredibly beneficial for him to have a couple years to be in this offense, because he was a guy who a lot of people thought was a little raw coming out of Utah State. He had a couple years to really hone in, figure out what LaFleur is doing. LaFleur is a genius offensively, so now when he gets in there and he gets his chance, it's like he's throwing to open receivers, and this offense, kind of this scheme, opening things up for him and making it easy for him. That's why I think we're seeing him lead the NFL in passer rating and have the 6 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. He's getting great offensive line play. He's been sacked twice. He's only been hit like 6 times in 2 games. That's great, but he needs to show it against a defense like the Saints that's just been hounding quarterbacks, has been sticking the opposing receivers like glue, and we've seen these great defensive numbers for the Saints. If he can show it against them this week, especially like if he can make a clutch play in the fourth quarter, then yeah, I can say he's a real deal, but it's way too soon.
Yeah, the other thing about the Packers offense is they're playing a little bit faster than they have in years past, and part of that is you don't have Aaron Rodgers at the line checking and changing the play just about every down. Jordan Love's going with what's called, like Luke said, it's working. He also, guys, brings an element of mobility to the table, which the Saints have struggled with in years past.
Yeah, I think he's much more of a threat to run than Bryce Young was. So I think that's something the Saints definitely going to be aware of. They did a good job last week of keeping Bryce Young kind of bottled up. Didn't really let him get out and made some plays when he did try to buy time with his pocket. But Jordan Love's, I think, a much bigger threat. So I think it's a definite concern. I also think the Packers lead the league in red zone offense. I think they scored 5 touchdowns and 6 trips to the red zone. We know the Saints defensively have been really good down there. So I think that's going to be another key to the game. When they get down there, who wins that battle? Because you got strength on strength.
And I mentioned them not stopping the run, but also they haven't actually run the ball well either when they have it. So I think that's going to put them in a lot of 3rd and longs. And as we've seen this season, the Saints are, really good at getting off the field on third downs. I mean, they're like one of the top teams in the league. I think they're tied for third with the Cowboys. So if they can't run the ball, I think that could, cause some trouble.
We talked about this in Wednesday's show. One big reason the Saints are so good on third down is because they've been so good on first and second down. And I'd love to see average yards to go on third down. I'll bet they lead the league in that. I mean, it seems like it's always 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 10.
Not quite leading the league with their top 10 or top 7, I think. Teams are needing almost 8 yards on average on third down. And then you look at what they've done rushing defense-wise on first and second down. Something like they've faced 24 carries on those downs, and more than half of them have gone for 3 or fewer yards. So I think the run defense and the pass rush and the coverage, all this stuff is working together, and that's why we've seen them dominate so far in the first 2 games.
Aaron Jones is listed as questionable, but it seems like he's trending toward playing. And that's almost akin to the Saints getting Alvin Kamara back last week. Like, that's a big playmaker, and I would think the Packers are expecting a boost from him.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's definitely their best running back. There's no question about it. And I expect them to try to establish the run, to take a little pressure off Love. But I think they're going to challenge the Saints deep. And so to do that, you need to get the running game going to kind of balance that out, give him time. And look, Green Bay offensively has got terrific numbers right now, but they've also played. I mean, the Bears' defense has been lit up now twice. I mean, I think it's a huge problem for the Bears right now, among other things in Chicago.
Was the level on that okay?
Yeah. So like they haven't faced a defense like they're going to face on Sunday with the Saints. So they're going to get challenged in a way they haven't been challenged so far. I know Atlanta's improved on defense, but they're not the Saints unit. The Saints are so experienced. I think that's the key. And Tyrann Mathieu talked about that a few times. Is it took them a little while last year to kind of get it going on the defensive side of the ball. But since the second half, I mean, what are we going now? 10 games holding people under. And I know they under 20 points, but I know they haven't played a ton of elite offenses in that group. But still, holding people under 20 points, you're going to win most of those games.
All right, we had our Kendry Miller question on offense. Let's go on defense. Rod, you first. Does Jordan Love throw an interception in this game? Saints have had multiple opportunities for picks. Love hasn't thrown one. Do they get Jordan on Sunday?
I'm going to say they do. Yeah.
Anybody disagree with that?
And I'm going to say it's Alontae Taylor. He's going to get his first career pick.
Oh,
next level.
I like it, calling the name out.
I love it. I love the confidence. It's great. At 27 yards and Alontae Taylor gets his first pick. I'm going to roll with Rod on that.
All right. Jeff?
Yeah, look, I'll be surprised if they even go toward Marshawn Lattimore. So it probably would make sense that if anybody's going to get it, it's going to be Alontae Taylor. You know what else could happen here is, we've seen this happen a lot. Saints are really good at batting balls, especially Cam Jordan at the line of scrimmage. So you could see a batted ball, and who knows comes down with that one. Maybe like Brian Brzee or somebody. Be a big man interception.
How about Jordan Howden back there for Marcus May coming up with a batted ball?
It's going to be an opportunity for him, and they're really high on him. I mean, you hear it across the board. They're high on Jordan Howden. Now, he's going to get tested as well. I mean, can you imagine your first NFL start at Lambeau Field? It's one of the more iconic venues in sports. It's going to be a cool experience for him.
And Kendry Miller, same thing on the other side of the ball. So two rookies making their NFL debuts this weekend. Special teams, we talked about Blake Grupe and Lou Hedley having to play in those elements, but similar climate to Notre Dame where Blake Grupe played. I would imagine.
And Miami, where Lou Hedley played.
Yeah. Lou Hedley's probably, he's like scaffolded and stuff. He probably knows. He can put his finger up and tell the exact kilometers per hour of the wind just by putting his finger up. So I don't know that it's going to affect those guys a lot. The other thing I'll say about the Saints special teams, though, is it seems like the kick coverage and the kick return game haven't seen, now since the big one of the fumble on the opening kickoff against Tennessee, but they've mostly made positive plays. I mean, I think they've won that area of the game.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was. We've heard Rizzi talk about this. Darren Rizzi, the special teams coordinator, kind of throughout this training camp, early start to the season, is they've got a lot of guys they really like in the coverage unit. Whether it's Lonnie Johnson or Ike Yadam or JT Gray, who obviously has been doing it for a long time. DeMarco Jackson's been really solid on the teams. Zach Bond has been really. I think the list goes really on and on. They've stocked their roster with a lot of really good special teams guys. So that part's not surprising. I think the only part that's surprising to me is, we've seen how explosive Shaheed is with the ball in his hand. I'm surprised we haven't seen him like break like a really long one in his early career here. I mean, it's got to happen at some point, right?
Yeah, and I think Green Bay's got a really good returner, right? If I'm maybe mistaken.
Yeah, Keyshawn Nixon, I think.
Correct. Yeah, I think he's a talented guy, and
they got Rich Bisaccia up there.
Rich Bisaccia talked this week about how the Saints are one of the best rushing units in the league. Foskey almost got to a couple of them last week. We know they got the one in the opener against Tennessee, and he did mention exactly what Luke's talking about. They have elite cover guys. He said, very aggressive, kind of like they are on defense. They're just aggressive in their special teams. And this could be an opportunity. I know Green Bay, their kicker, rookie Anders Carlson, who's the brother, I think, of Daniel Carlson, but he's had a really strong start to the year. Now, it's going to be his first time kicking at Lambeau in a real game, but got two basically young kickers going against each other in this game. So
I want to see the side-by-side comparison of, like, Carlson and Blake Grupe, isn't
right?
Aren't the Carlson guys like Nordic, like 6'4", 6'5"?
Yeah.
Just
we need the boxing comparison, the reach, 6'2" to 3'9" or whatever it is.
And they had Crosby was there forever, right? Mason Crosby.
He was there when I was in high school, I think.
Yeah, he was an unbelievable kicker for them for so long. So it's there'll be some pressure on Carlson trying to step into those shoes.
And they had a punter that was on the injury report one day this week. I'm not sure if he's still on there, but he's dealing with the
I think it looked like he practiced.
Yeah.
Oh,
he did. Okay.
Catch a long snap with a bad finger. All right, you're watching the Saints Insider podcast on NOLA.com and the Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel. Check us out. Give us a like, a subscribe. Check us out also on podcast feeds, Apple and Spotify, and leave a 5-star review. It means a lot to us, more than you know. And we're going to get into some keys to the games and some predictions. So quick, let's run the room. Luke, we'll start with you. If you can boil it down to something, what is your key to Saints versus Packers on Sunday?
Prevent the big plays on defense, especially if you've got two new starters in that secondary like we're potentially expecting. And then finally, protect Derek Carr. Like, give him some time to operate. Because we haven't seen it through 2 weeks. I don't think we've seen what this offense is really capable of because he's been running for his life or getting through his progressions too fast. If they can finally keep him upright, and if they can prevent Green Bay from hitting the home run balls, I think I really like the Saints in this. But that's, I think, two big asks.
Rod?
Yeah, for me, it's going to be just being able to run the ball a little bit, and I think that's the main thing. I think if they can run the ball, I think the defense is going to do what it's been doing all season long. If they can continue playing like they have, I think they'll be fine. I think that the two guys who are going to play in the secondary, I think they're going to hold up.
I agree with that about the run game. 4 yards per carry, magic number for me. Get to 4 yards per carry, and I think the Saints' chances of winning go way up. How about you, Don?
Well, I did see a stat that was kind of eye-opening today. I think the Packers have the best home record in the NFL since 2019. I think they're 27-6. So they're going to have to handle the environment, handle the conditions. I mean, it's going to be much, I think, more hostile environment than what they saw in Carolina. And Derek Carr, to Luke's point, I think whoever makes the most explosive play is going to win the game. I know it's a kind of a common theme in the NFL, but Derek Carr can't afford to throw one up like he did last week. I mean, the defense bailed him out. That's been a knock on him, you said, in his career, playing on the road in these kind of tough conditions. I think he's got to be sound and not make any of these critical mistakes, because against a really aggressive Packers defense, that's the kind of thing that can snowball on you. In that place, you throw a pick, they get the crowd going, they get momentum, they get confidence, and I've seen it, we've all seen it a million times on the road. These things kind of add up. So if they can just avoid those big mistakes on offense, then I think this thing's going to go down to the fourth quarter, and we'll see how it plays out.
Okay. Saints Insider Podcast is brought to you by Bank Plus. It's prediction time. Short week, tough place to play, definitely a step up in class for the Saints. Do they get to 3-0, Luke Johnson?
I picked not. I picked the Packers to win 24-21, and until I see this Saints offense execute at the level that we're kind of all expecting it to get to, it's going to be hard for me to pick them to go into a tough environment and beat a good team on the road, especially on a short week. So I think it's possible for sure. I'm actually I was leaning towards waffling on that decision and picking the Saints, but I got to see it before I believe it.
I mentioned this earlier in the week, but the NFL is so much about scheduling, and picking the NFL is so much about scheduling. Windy, rainy, Green Bay home opener, short week, back-to-back road games for the Saints. Can't pick the Saints. 20-16 Green Bay. Rod?
We're not going to save me for last.
Yeah, we got to go in order of the graphics. So, go ahead and make your homer pick.
Yeah, I picked.
It's not, but
that's why I'm not getting to make the trip because I picked a guess. I picked the Saints to win 20-19. I'm just sort of a believer in this defense right now. I just feel like they're playing really well. I mean, that's 19 points is probably 4 field goals and a touchdown. I think the Saints in the red zone is just. I think they're playing really well. I'm leaning that way. So Saints 20-19, which will tie me with Luke and you for the lead as far as our predictions.
Yeah, if the Saints, we'll all be 2-1, just like the Saints are.
Jeff will be
Let me wait. Saints offense got to get better in the red zone too, though. We haven't talked about that. I mean, that's been a huge issue. When they get down there, they got to get 6 and not 3. Jeff?
Yeah, look, I'd like the Saints a lot better if Green Bay didn't lose last week. I think they're going to be really motivated, coming home, first home game, like we said. I just can't. I can't see them winning that game. I think something's going to happen. Like I said, a Derek Carr pick, a fumble, a fake punt, or something. I just feel like I thought that might happen at Carolina, but I definitely think this is the kind of game where something bad's going to happen. They've had kind of everything go their way the first 2 games. We'll see how it goes this week, but I think I picked 23-21, very close to Luke's pick.
We're all pretty similar as far as score lines, but I love that you ended there because I'd like to just kind of give the room this question before we get out of here, and that is, if the Saints do find a way to win this game with everything kind of intangible going against them, it's on the road, it's a short week, it's Green Bay's home opener, they're coming off a loss, all of these intangible things. If they find a way to win this game, does it show that this is a special season in New Orleans? I mean, it's early still, but man, it would say a lot. It'd be a big statement.
Yeah, I still think it's just way too early. Hey, we've seen way too much streaky behavior out of this team in recent years. Where even last year, I think they won. They ripped off like 4 wins in 5 games toward the end of the year. We're thinking like, man, maybe they'll make the playoffs, and then they're out of it, and they kind of.
Can I blow raspberry again?
Yeah, I mean that that Week 18 game against Carolina last year. Yeah, obviously it ended up being a meaningless game, but it's just hard. I think we gotta see a lot more play out. Even if they get a win, they got some tough games coming up.
Yeah, I was gonna say I would say this. I think anybody 2 weeks ago, if you'd say, hey, you're not gonna have Alvin Kamara for your first 3 weeks, 2 of those games are gonna be on the road. You would think they could go 3-0. I think it's, I don't think I would have predicted that. So if they can come back 3-0, and I don't know when's the last time they started 3-0. Do we know that?
Same 2013.
Yeah, they won 5-0.
Okay.
They won 5
So,
straight, yeah.
but they come back home. They get Tampa. I think Houston's in the mix there. I know they go up to Boston, New England, but the schedule's so easy. This team could easily rack up double-digit victories, and really we still don't know how good they are because of the lack of competition right now. This is going to be the biggest test by far. And so you're right. If they win this game in Lambeau with all these intangible factors going against them, could be something special.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think 3-0 with the schedule they played I don't think that makes them special. I mean, until you beat you play the 49ers, the Cowboys, Eagles, the Ravens, those type of teams. I think then you can say that, but they don't even play any of those teams this year. So they'll have to rack up more than 3 wins for me to be ready to say this team is special.
Yeah,
Rod wants to see him in the Super Bowl before he's able to.
He just wants to go to Vegas. Yeah,
the Saints have never gone 17-0, have they?
Not that I'm aware of. Yeah, look, to borrow Dennis Allen's phrase, you just want to stack wins, right? And that'd be another win, and it'd be another margin that you could lose a game later and still have a pretty good record and still have a chance of making the playoffs. And so this would be a good one to get. So that's going to be it for us from the Saints Insider podcast here in our Metairie studios. Saints Insider is sponsored by Bank Plus. Their banking decisions are actually made here in New Orleans by local bankers who know the community and take the time to know you. From small business to big business, home loans to bank anywhere technology, Bank Plus is here for New Orleans. Learn more at bankplus.net. And we will join you after the game from Lambeau Field on Sunday for the Saints Insider postgame show. Myself, Luke, and Jeff will be there. Rod, you drew the short straw this week, but we will be there. We'll have a little pregame video as well. So check that out on this YouTube channel and the Saints Insider postgame show as well. For Luke Johnson, Rod Walker, and Jeff Duncan, this has been the Saints Insider podcast. Thanks for watching.